Stories of resilience, strengthening the American Muslim narrative.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning. Thank you and welcome to Chicago. We're very excited to have you here. And since we are very excited to begin the conference with these stories of resilience, and indeed, who is more resilient than Muslim women, we would like to just dive right in. And I would begin by asking my sister, Tahira Ahmed, who is the Associate Chaplain at Northwestern University, to begin with some recitation of Kitabullah, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله. فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء. فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا نفسا إلا وسعها لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين صدق الله العظيم.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth belongs to Allah. And whether you manifest what is in your minds or hide it, Allah will call you to account according to it. And then He will forgive whom He pleases and chastise whom He pleases. And Allah has power over all things. The Prophet believes in what has been revealed to him from his Lord, and so do the believers. And they all believe in Allah and His angels and His books and His prophets, and make no difference among any of His prophets. And they say, we hear and we obey our Lord. Thy forgiveness do we need, and to Thee is our eventual course. Allah does not impose upon any soul a duty, but to the extent of its ability. And for it is benefit what it has earned upon it of both evil that it has wrought. Our Lord, do not punish us if we forget or make mistakes. Our Lord, do not lay upon us a burden as Thou did upon those before us. Our Lord, do not impose upon us which we have not the strength to bear, and pardon us and grant us with protection and have mercy on us. You indeed are our patron, so help us against the unbelieving people. Ameen.
Jazakallahu khair. To my sister Tahira, my name is Hind Makki, and when I think of resilient women, I think of women like Tahira. Those of you who know her know why I think this. Another reason why she comes to my mind, as well as the women who are sharing the stage with me, is because these are the stories of the women that I've always grown up with. I am a child of women and grandmothers who raised their families, who broke barriers, who chose a path of education and empowerment for themselves and for their sisters and for their communities. I myself attended an Islamic high school for girls where questions of character and goodwill toward one another and empowerment and achieving her dreams was part and parcel of this Islamic education that we received, as well as learning about the women and men of our Muslim history. So imagine my shock when I went to college, actually several years ago, over this very Labor Day weekend was my freshman year in college, and wearing my hijab sitting on the main green, a woman comes up to me and asks me if I'm the first woman in my family to ever go to college. I was shocked. But you know, I started to realize that the stories and the images of Muslim women that our fellow Americans who are not Muslim, who see on television, from the stories of the harems and the odalisks, to the veiled women of the Middle East, to the angry women who were fighting in post-colonial Middle East and South Asia. There's literally a veil between the West and the East as people think about Muslim women. And I think we are able to share who we are, share our own stories of resilience. As I mentioned earlier to my panelists, who is more resilient than Muslim women? And I would like to spend some time to just introduce you to our panelists today. I know many of you know them, or you think that you might know who they are and what they stand for. But I would like to spend the rest of our time together by introducing you to the speakers and then asking them each to come up and share their stories of resilience and the stories of the women who have empowered them. And so we will begin with Dr. Jamila Kareim. She's an author and a former professor of religion at Spelman College in Atlanta. She specializes in Islam and Muslims and the United States, Islamic feminism, race and ethnicity, immigration, and transnational identity. She is currently completing a manuscript on the relationship between African American and immigrant Muslims, and this is, as you know, a very critical component of American Muslim identities. She's the author of several published articles and a new book, and she's one of our book authors here at ISNA. She has presented her research to several scholarly communities, including Princeton, Vanderbilt, Harvard, and Brandeis, and is a frequent lecturer and also a frequent contributor to Aziza magazine, another magazine which highlights the stories of resilient women. Jamila obtained her PhD in Islamic Studies at Duke University, where she also completed her undergraduate degree in electrical engineering. She's originally from Atlanta, Georgia, where she lives, and she was raised in an active African-American Muslim community. After Jamila, we will hear from Rumana Ahmed, who is the advisor in the National Security Council at the White House. She primarily works on global entrepreneurship and American events for the president. In her former role, she was the acting liaison to the American Muslim community to the White House. This is another really critical role. Muslim women as bridge builders, as people who are telling stories of their communities and bringing people together. After Rumana, we will hear from Dr. Ingrid Matson. And Dr. Ingrid Matson comes to us from Canada, where she is born and raised and currently lives. However, we do claim her in some respects here in Chicago, where she completed her PhD from the University of Chicago in 1999. And many of us know her and love her. She, between 1998 to 2012, she was the professor of Islamic Studies at Hartford Seminary in Connecticut, where she developed and directed the first accredited graduate program for Muslim chaplains in America. And she served as the director of the McDonald Center for the Study of Islam and Christian-Muslim Relations. And then, of course, from 2001 and to 2010, Dr. Mattson served as the vice president and then president of ISNA, and this was groundbreaking. She was the first woman to be in this role, to be elected in a position such as this across the world. And Dr. Mattson's writings, which are both academic and public, focus on primarily Quranic interpretation, Islamic theological ethics, and interfaith relations. And her book, The Story of the Quran, is an academic bestseller and was chosen by the U.S. National Endowment for the Humanities for inclusion in its Bridging Cultures program. So we're beginning to see a theme of the incredible women who are on the stage tonight, or this morning. After Dr. Mattson, we will hear from Najah Bazi. And Najah Bazi comes to us from Michigan, where she is born and raised. And she is a transcultural nurse, clinical specialist, and a diversity specialist with 25 years, over 25 years, specializing in this area of transcultural healthcare. And Mrs. Bazzy is also the executive director and the founder of Zaman International, a humanitarian nonprofit organization which provides critical services to women and children and families in the metropolitan Detroit area. And this is, it's not the only thing that she does, but it's a culmination of much of her work and a very good example of all of the work that she has been doing, supporting within the community and outside of the community, strengthening and empowering women and girls. And Najah is well known locally and internationally for her lectures on many, many topics related to Islam, including interfaith dialogue and gender equity and equality and human rights and medical ethics. And our final speaker this morning in this session will be Tawakkol Karman, who is coming to us from Yemen. And Tawakkol was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011 in recognition for her work in the nonviolent struggle for the safety of women and the right for women's full participation to peace building and political access in Yemen. Upon being awarded the prize, Ms. Karman was the first Yemeni and the first Arab woman and the second Muslim woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize, as well as the, yes. And she was the youngest Nobel Peace Laureate to date, although that's going to also be updated when she earned it at age 32. And she is also a mother and a journalist and human rights activist and a politician. And I'm very, very honored. I mentioned last night that I'm standing on the shoulder of giants, and today I feel, again, the same way. And so without further ado, I would just like to ask Dr. Jamila to come up and present her perspective as well. Thank you.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum. First, I must say how honored I feel to be among this group of amazing Muslim women and with all of you today. About a year ago, I happened to look through my old 1993 yearbook at Warith Deen Muhammad High School. Next to my senior picture, I rediscovered these words. More than anything, Jamila wants to play a role in the growth of Islam in America and the positive growth of the African American community, beginning first with raising a Muslim family of her own. SubhanAllah, 10 years after high school, I completed a doctorate in Islamic studies at Duke University with a specialty in Islam in America, race, and gender. My family came second, though, not first. I married at 29 after completing my first year teaching at Spelman College in Atlanta. I had my first child, Yahya, at 32. My first book was published the same year he was born, 2008. A year later, I was pregnant with my second child. I was also up for tenure, and so I diligently prepared documents for my tenure portfolio. Weeks after I gave birth to my son, Lut, I received the call from the college president awarding me tenure. And then, alhamdulillah, and then a few months later, I chose the road less traveled. I left my tenured professor job to stay at home with my two sons, an infant and a toddler. I had the career and credentials that would normally make staying at work irresistible. But to me, it just didn't make sense. I was blessed with a situation that many women would die for: a reliable, God-conscious husband who could well provide for his family without the help of his wife. Why then, I thought, would I assume both the work of provider and the work of mother which only women can do. As many of you know, it is double the work to have a full-time job, just like a man, while at the same time carry a child in pregnancy, breastfeed, and pump milk. So I took advantage of my situation. Instead of stretching and stressing myself, I decided to focus on the divine gift of motherhood. I wanted to prioritize my unique ability as a woman to produce life and all that this miracle entailed: the pregnancy, the labor and delivery, the healing, the breastfeeding, the unrivaled bond between mother and child, and the mother's position as the first teacher. Also, I wanted to homeschool my children. Leaving my job was a major act of faith. What if my husband lost his job? I feared. It was faith and knowledge that allowed me to overcome my fears. Knowledge that Allah Ta'ala provides all things, and that whatever Allah Ta'ala wants for me, no one can prevent it from coming to me. As you know, it is the times that we step out on faith and rely on Allah entirely that He grants us more than we could have ever imagined. Since leaving academia, I published a second book, and I continue to travel across the country to speak on college campuses and within faith communities. I invite you to visit my blog to learn how, by Allah's grace, I have balanced my scholarship and homeschooling, now with 3 sons. I began with my story because I believe that at its core, it is an ordinary story. It represents the everyday struggle of women negotiating family life, careers, and personal ambitions. Ordinary women are the ones who emerge as visionaries and leaders as we respond to everyday struggles. The great women of our faith, often they are remembered for doing the common things that women are called to do. Hajar made history in search of sustenance for her hungry baby as she ran between the hills of Safa and Marwa. Asiya changed the world when she took into her palace a baby boy, abandoned, at least it seemed, in a basket on the Nile. Maryam stands today as a beacon of light and purity because she endured the pains of childbirth alone, uttering, "Oh, if only I had died before this time," and was something discarded and forgotten. And Khadija reigns as the wife we all dream to be. She covered and comforted Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as his heart shook from the intensity of the first revelation. And Fatima serves as a model of countless virtues as she demonstrated affection and service to her beloved father, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah grant peace to all of these exemplary women. They are exemplary because they did common things with extraordinary faith. One of our teachers, Dr. Umar Farouk Abdallah, once stated, "The more pure our hearts become and the more filled they are with knowledge and light, then the more amazing will be the things that we do." Inshallah, each of us in this room is on the path of doing amazing things. And for sure, each of us has the potential to be leaders and visionaries because each of us God has brought into the world with unique attributes. Similarly, what each of us is meant to contribute to the world is unique and original. I shared my story not to influence you to leave your job if you are a young mother, but to inspire you to boldly move in the direction to which Allah is guiding you. And this is what today's Muslim women leaders are doing, even in the face of struggles. I believe that when we dream and act boldly, relying completely upon Allah and not our own efforts, Allah blesses us abundantly, and we accomplish what no one, not even ourselves, thought possible. And part of Allah's blessing is that we leave a legacy that will benefit others for generations. I will end my talk by briefly highlighting 2 American Muslim women who left an amazing legacy. We must honor them and the others like them as part of carrying on the great work for which we are destined. The first woman is Sister Clara Muhammad. May Allah have mercy on her. The wife of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Sister Clara Muhammad played a significant role in the founding of the Nation of Islam, whose motto, "Do for self," stirred nation members to create an alternative to the public school system, a system that provided unequal second-class education to African American children. One of the greatest contributions of the Nation of Islam was its establishing primary and secondary independent schools on a national level by the 1950s. This was unprecedented in both Black and Muslim communities. The nation's school system for children was given the lofty title, the University of Islam. The University of Islam's beginnings were in Clara Muhammad's home. She and her husband withdrew their children from the public schools in 1934, a time when homeschooling was illegal. Elijah Muhammad was fined and arrested. Clara Muhammad never returned her children to the public schools despite harassment by law enforcement. It is reported that she told the police at her door, "I would rather die than send my children to the public school system." This required enormous courage and faith in God, especially for a woman from the Jim Crow South who either witnessed or heard firsthand of the brutality and violence inflicted upon African Americans who resisted white supremacy. In 1980, Imam Warith D. Muhammad renamed the University of Islam schools in honor of his mother. As a graduate of Sister Clara Muhammad School, and as a homeschooling mother, I am indebted to Sister Clara Muhammad for her faith, resilience, and sacrifice. The other woman I must honor is Taiba Taylor. May Allah have mercy on her. She returned to Allah almost a year ago. Taiba was the co-founder of Aziza magazine, and she was a trailblazer. She tore down the boundaries of race, the boundaries of religion, and the boundaries of gender. Taiba Taylor had always cared passionately about gender attitudes and practices in our communities and saw Aziza magazine as a long-needed correction to confining women's interests, ideas, and concerns to a woman's column in a Muslim publication or to the occasional conference talk. Aziza magazine did something that virtually no Muslim publications or mosque communities were doing on any consistent and systematic level, and that is profiling and promoting Muslim women as scholars and authorities of Islamic knowledge. Taiba often described men as the gatekeepers and interpreters of the primary sources of Islam. So she saw Aziza magazine as opening the gates and providing a platform for women to publicly emerge as the scholars of Islam that we have always been. This platform from women scholars was dear to Taiba, for she herself was a woman of immense spirituality and great intellect. Taiba thoughtfully designed a way to create a platform for women scholars of religion and spirituality through the Deen or Religion section of the magazine. The Deen section gave women like me, scholars of Islam in academia, as well as women scholars educated in more traditional institutions, a platform for our voices that would not have been afforded if not for Aziza. On behalf of all Muslim women who see themselves in Aziza, the scholars, the caregivers, the judges, the activists, the poets, the playwrights, the doctors and scientists, the models, the homemakers, the working moms, the extraordinary and the ordinary, we thank you, Taiba Taylor, and we follow in your footsteps. We continue the legacy. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, but since this is Stories of Resilience, I do want to be able to share my story and kind of where it originated for me and my perspective now looking back. So I was actually homeschooled for 2 years, and the experience for everyone is different. For me, the experience was both good and bad. The good was that those 2 years of homeschooling became the time period that my parents made sure that I got to take the time to learn more about my own faith. Now, a lot of us assume that we know about our religion if we practice it. However, believe it or not, sometimes we actually don't know as much as we should do. We don't always have that knowledge with us that gives us the power to explain how our faith is connected to who we are and what we do, and how it connects with the current realities that we face. Now, the downside was that I became very antisocial. Coming back into public school after 9/11, straight out of homeschooling, being antisocial, wearing hijab in public for the first time was difficult. It was challenging. And at that time, I actually questioned, should I stop wearing hijab? Should I take it off? Because I was tired of getting bullied. I was tired of being called a terrorist. I was tired of the multiple questions of why women were oppressed in Islam and why I had to cover my hair. Did I have hair? And actually, at one point, getting attempted to get pushed down the stairs. However, at that moment, when the people did ask me questions, there were some who actually took the information I gave them and were enlightened by it, were surprised by it. That was the first time that I realized how powerful knowledge can be, how powerful it can be to actually speak up and say something. There are people who are actually just curious about who we are and unfortunately don't know as much about us. That was the first time that I actually felt empowered because I was able to teach someone something that they didn't know. From there, in high school, I decided to run for vice president of my class. And I know there's a lot of young people in the room, and sometimes you might be intimidated to do that. Mind you, this is the person who doesn't like speaking publicly. I forced myself to do it because I heard it would look good on my college application, but didn't actually know what it would entail. When I had to speak in front of a group of 300 people, I tried to back out of it, but I couldn't. However, getting past that big challenge, I look back now and I realize that was the first time that I took on a challenge and something that I was uncomfortable doing, and I actually learned that I was pretty good at it, not the best. So the one thing that I would say to all the women out there, young girls as well, is look for and force yourself to do the things that you're not sure if you're capable of doing. If you're not sure that you'll be the best at doing. Because believe it or not, you will either learn about a skill that you have that you never knew about, or you'll learn about a weakness that you have and now you can focus on making it better and stronger. So over time, I took the position of, you know what, I don't care what people say to me. Looking back now, I realize that every time I questioned myself, it was actually a barrier that I was creating within my own mind and holding myself back. Looking back now, I realize that every challenge should actually be looked at as an opportunity to become stronger. When I came out of high school and went into college, I applied for an internship at the White House. Now, I had no interest in government, I had no interest in politics, and I also questioned how influential you could actually be in government, which is, I'm sure, a question that a lot of you have. But I applied for the internship program because I was local and I thought it would be cool to work for the first Black president. So I did the internship. Alhamdulillah, right after graduation, my former boss actually brought me back to the White House and asked if I needed a job, and I was looking for a job, and of course I was looking for a paycheck. And mind you, looking back again, even all the challenges that I went through, getting into the White House was only the beginning of it. My challenges didn't end there. I continued to face more challenges. But every step of the way, it made me stronger, it made me bolder. Alhamdulillah, after 2 years actually, I was in the Office of Public Engagement, and my third year I became the acting liaison to the Muslim American community. What I valued so much about that role was realizing how important it is to actually be in the room. Being in the room is what gives your voice power. It's what gives your community a voice there. If you're not in the room, you're not part of the conversation. Having it on social media is not enough. You have to have it coupled with action as well. But the best part of my job when I was doing the engagement was actually meeting some of the other incredible Muslim women who are out there doing great things that many of us don't even know about. Luckily for me, one of them was Ahmed, who we brought in last year when I organized a Muslim Women Emerging Leaders event at the White House. We called it Breaking the Glass Ceiling. And there we had women who were accomplished in government, communications, in STEM, which is a field that we need more women in, as well as journalism. And we also brought in young girls who were aspiring to be in those fields. And it was a great opportunity for them to meet other Muslim women who are doing incredible things. But one of the stories that I remember being shared, and we heard it already, about Khadija, if she as a woman during her time could become the most influential businesswoman in that entire area, at a time, and actually even now, that is dominated by men primarily, why shouldn't we be able to do the same? Now, one thing that I do want to say, only because I hear a lot of young people talk about it, is why do we face all these struggles in America? The struggles we face in America is nothing compared to what women face in our own Muslim countries. And that we should be very grateful for. Should we accept it as enough? Never. The other thing, too, that I want to be able to share and just kind of be able to look back at everything that I had learned is we are facing major challenges right now that have come up in just the last few years ever since 9/11. And it's really important for us to step forward and speak up about it. Knowledge is key. Do the things that you think are a challenge because each of those challenges are an opportunity for you. I'm sure yesterday you heard from Fatima Knight. Earlier this year, we brought in a bunch of young Muslim Americans, among them young women. One of them was Fatima Knight, who was the one who raised money for the churches that were burned down, and that got a lot of attention. And she was able to also meet with the president and speak to him. Another young woman that we got to bring in was a 27-year-old girl from Burma who, at the age of, I believe like 23 or 24, she was a political prisoner in Burma for speaking up for women's rights and the rights of the Rohingya. She's still fighting for that. She actually even created her own organization to fight for women's rights. And she's not giving up despite having been a political prisoner at such a young age. Now, I know sometimes hearing these inspirational stories seem like you have to be really active and you have to be really out there, you have to be really smart to get it. You don't, actually. There are small ways to get involved. It starts at your schools. It starts within your families. And the one thing that I'll put out there that I think, we haven't mentioned yet, but I'm sure it's going to come up, that even I faced, is the challenge of culture. We can't ignore the fact that a major problem in the Muslim American community is that culture gets defined with religion. I faced those challenges with my own mother, who wanted her kids to all become doctors and engineers. She never was a big fan of politics, but once I got in and she saw the impact that you can have and how important it is to be there, she now calls all of my relatives and tells them, we need to encourage our kids to be in government. Now, I'm not here to tell you all to get into government, but what I'm saying is, as someone who wasn't interested in it, I got in there and I actually realized how important it is and how much the Muslim American community's voice is missing in there. Even when it seems hopeless, know that it's not. And as the next young generation, it's our responsibility to really step up to the plate and really take action. And the last point that I want to make is, we'll be hearing from some other women leaders who have been parts of organizations, but Muslim American organizations and mosques need to do more to empower and lift up women. We all talk about it. We all talk about how good it is and how it's what we need to do, but sometimes it's intentional, but sometimes it's the subconscious. We're so used to and trained to seeing men in all these positions that we actually need to force ourselves and step out of the way to realize that we need to really lift up more young people, put them in positions, put women in higher positions. And the last thing that I want to end with is, as someone who after 9/11 didn't have a voice and went through all those challenges, never in a million years would I have dreamed that I would be able to work at the White House, sit in the West Wing with where the president is, as a hijabi, most importantly as a hijabi. And I have to give credit, whether or not everyone, agrees with everything that he has done or not. I have to give credit to this president for doing so much to try and empower more young people and women in a way that no other president has. 4 years ago, they put faith and took risk in giving a 22-year-old a chance, fresh out of college with no government experience, who's a Muslim hijabi, a chance to represent herself and actually work on the things that she cared about. And ever since then, I've been able to work on global entrepreneurship and meet incredible women entrepreneurs from Saudi Arabia, from Morocco, and from all over the world, and also domestically as well too. So to all the young women out there, what I want to say is know that there are women out there who are doing great things. Look for them, hear about their stories, connect with them, and be inspired to really step up and be bold, no matter how bad the challenges are. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I'm really sad that we have such a short time for this session, and we started late, so unfortunately we're all going to have to shorten what we have to say. This is really loud. You should turn this down on the soundboard. So let me just highlight a few points. Skip the talk. I'd like to begin by saying, if you learn one thing from this session, the first thing is that Muslim women are diverse as Muslim men are diverse. Diverse in their abilities, skills, capacities, life situations, and choices as well. There is not an ideal woman except to say that there is an ideal believer. And what is ideal for women is the same thing that is ideal for men, which is taqwa. To be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to fear Allah. Just let the sound of the rolling garbage truck go behind us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the one who is most pious, the one who is most aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the measure of human beings. That is the measure of a believer, no matter whether they are a woman or a man. We see this diversity in women living today. We see this diversity in the women who surrounded the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we could just take two brief examples. If we look at two of the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen and compare their abilities and their choices and what they had to offer the community, we have someone like Aisha bint Abi Bakr, may Allah be pleased with her, who was a leader in her community, who was intellectually highly gifted, who was, in terms of her personality and character, very bold, very forthright, able to stand out and really engage in public debates and issues, and in fact come under attack for that. It is because of her and because of her great sacrifices, her efforts, and her nobility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored her with a revelation specifically to her situation, which was when she was being slandered for being unchaste, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verses punishing those who would slander al-muhsanat, the chaste women. This is an extraordinary privilege to have verses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveal part of the Quran because of her situation. And we know that it is all too common for women who are in the public sphere, women who step forward, women who have something to offer, and who are leading the community to be attacked in this way. And this is one of the wisdoms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the reasons why this is a lesson for all of us from the very beginning of Islam, that it is very easy for women to try to intimidate women or harass women by attacking their chastity, their probity, their honor, their dignity. And so we should be aware of that. So part of the resilience is learning to handle insults, learning to handle pushback, learning to handle difficulty. Any Muslim woman who's been out in public knows that that will happen, whether that's on social media or publicly. So we need to we need to train and teach and exemplify courage, for the women in our community, for the girls in our community, and not to run away as soon as there are those who are being mean or who are bullying or who are attacking. At the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all people differently with different capacities and strengths and abilities. I want to say very clearly, because I've been involved in counseling some young people, you have to know your child. And it's unfair to put a child in a situation, or a young woman or anyone, young woman or man, in a situation that they're not capable of handling emotionally or spiritually at that time. You do not force someone in a situation of great hardship and stress if they don't have the ability to take care of it. So that we really need to be attentive to that kind of diversity. So when we see that not every Muslim woman is like Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. Among the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, we have someone like Zainab, who was nicknamed Tawil al-Yad. Why was she nicknamed Tawil al-Yad? Because the Prophet Muhammad said that one of his wives who had the longest hand would be the first to join him in paradise. Now, the women around the Prophet Muhammad, they took this statement literally at the beginning, and they were measuring each other's hands. But then when Zainab, may Allah be pleased with her, died, they realized that he was using the term long of hand metaphorically, which should tell us something a little bit about the hermeneutics of interpreting the Quran and Sunnah sometimes. And it meant, metaphorically, it meant the one who was the most generous. What was her generosity? She was a woman who was not particularly a prominent public kind of outgoing figure, but she was someone who was very good at handicrafts. You think of her as more of the homebody kind of person, the one who stayed and did a lot of crafts with her hands because she was talented in that way, and then sold them. And with that money, she distributed charity to people in need. So here we have in the household of the Prophet Muhammad two women, two great women, both mothers of the believers, who have very different capacities and abilities and use their talents in different ways. And so this is something that we should recognize and celebrate. We also see the differences between the women of Mecca and the women of Medina, or who grew up in Yathrib, and the Ansari women. They were very different. We hear in the stories of the Sahaba that many of the women from Mecca, the Muhajirat, who emigrated from Mecca to Medina, found life in Medina very hard. Why? Because Mecca was a small city, but it was an urban center. These were, city women. Whereas Yathrib was an agricultural oasis. I mean, still is essentially. It was like moving from the city to the farm, from the city to the countryside. And the women of Mecca were not used to the kind of agricultural work, and even to do the kind of difficult housework that women in Medina were able to do. They had to be taught things like how to knead bread. And we have someone like Asma bint Abi Bakr, the sister of Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with them all, who narrates her story of how hard and difficult she found her life there, having to go to the date palm orchards and carry back these heavy baskets. She found it very difficult. On the other hand, we have someone like the great hero of Islam, Nusayba, may Allah be pleased with her, who was so strong, physically strong, who was so capable of undergoing physical hardship that she fought in the battles with the Prophet Muhammad and then with the Khulafa al-Rashidun after the Prophet died, until she died in old age. She is the one who, with her strength, her fighting ability and her physical strength, protected the Prophet Muhammad in the Battle of Uhud, receiving a very serious injury. And the Prophet Muhammad said, wherever I looked, I saw Nusayba. So we have even the difference in physical capacities. So let's really accept and embrace and support the capacities of individual women. And that is one of the things that will give women in our community resilience, that will make your girls resilient, is that you have a realistic understanding and assessment of their capacities, and you encourage them and nurture them, physical, emotional, spiritual, all of these different ways. And the right amount of stress brings strength. Too much stress can break a person. And if someone is too stressed, then they might refer to all sorts of very unhealthy behaviors. And finally, last but not least, is the importance of knowledge. Because without knowledge, the reaction to stress will be one that might be outside the limits of Islamic law and ethics. And this is very important. Don't confuse belligerence with resilience. We see some people in our community, the reaction to stress is not resilience, which means having the good qualities in yourself become stronger, whether physically, spiritually, morally, intellectually, but it's anger. Anger and lashing back. And this is why we see some young people who are attracted to extremist groups, because their reaction to stress is not resilience, but belligerence, and a kind of lashing out because they lack a true understanding of what Islam requires of them, and they also have not been allowed to grow and strengthen in a way that is actually healthy to them. And that's something that needs a much longer conversation in our community with youth workers and counselors and chaplains and others. So let's focus on that, on creating the conditions for really healthy growth. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahli baytihi. Bismillah. I wish to thank you all for being here today and to send blessings upon our Holy Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his holy family and his righteous companions. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullah. I'd also like to acknowledge this incredible, esteemed group of women who my back is to, and I feel disrespectful of that, but I wish to also thank them for their time and their energy and their commitment. I'd like to tell you just two stories in the brief 8 to 10 minutes, and those stories are both of a historical woman who inspires me not on a day by day, but probably more on a minute by minute when I need to make quick decisions and I think about, well, who do I go to? And I think we all need mentors and people in our mind that we go to. And then a little bit of time allows of a contemporary person who's very, very dear to me, who also has helped shape my thoughts, my mind's decision-making, so on and so forth. I would like to say that I don't see myself so much as a leader, but perhaps the better word for myself is a servant. And in servant leadership, I find the greatest comfort. There are 3 principles in Islam that these 2 women both carry and that I think we can all learn from. The first and foremost is the idea of taqwa, and I think it's been mentioned. The idea of God consciousness, the idea that not only in our prayer, but also in the everyday, moment-to-moment life we live, that we are so God conscious that the other 2 things that I speak about next, the other 2 traits flow from this taqwa. The second is this idea of ikhlas. And what ikhlas really means, the sense of purity, the sense of redefining and refining purity every single day and in all of our actions. And the third is adl, justice. And the way that justice is played out and balanced in our daily lives, whether at work, at home, in our communities, across the nation, in our international work, wherever it may be, and across all sectors. So obviously, these 3 traits are not applicable to only women, they're applicable to the Muslim mindset and the Muslim heart. It's what we carry with us. It's what God has endowed us with and has taught us and has sent us messengers and people to help guide us attached to these 3 very, very strong principles. I'm in love with Khadija. I'm in love with Fatima, her daughter, and I am absolutely in love with one who we speak less of, and I'm so happy that Dr. Mattson mentioned her, is Zainab. May God be pleased with them. Upon them peace. Zainab lives in my memory every single day, the blessed granddaughter of Khadija and Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon them, the daughter of Ali and Fatima. The reason why I carry her with me and she inspires me is her resilience was couched in patience that is really the patience of a prophet in many ways. Her steadfastness against all odds, against tyranny in the Umayyad Empire, her ability to watch the tragedy of Karbala with Imam Hussein, her beloved brother, and to be the protector of the women and children. And I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you, if it's her inspiration that has guided me and has coached me along the way in life to care for marginalized women with children, the orphaned, the underserved, the abandoned, the abused, the divorced, the widowed, those who are left to manage their households, female heads of households, with very little resources. And I do that on a daily basis. I do admit to that. Running Zaman International is a lot of responsibility. But I look to Zainab in the way in which she held herself, the way in which she was calm in the storm, the eye of the storm. But the resilience that she had to keep alive the stories of the Prophet and his family, and to narrate and to tell her perspective and to teach in Medina and to be a school in and of herself, an educator, a humanitarian, one who was committed to the cause. So I carry Zainab with me in my daily life. May God be pleased with her, upon her peace. The other person, and this is just an incredible story, and I'd like to share it with you in the few minutes that I have left. And some of you may relate to this. Imagine the mom who comes to this country, doesn't speak English, 15 years old, and I will not be able to finish the story, but the long and short of it is, she goes to kindergarten at 15 and is placed in a classroom with kindergartners. God gives her a son whose name is Samir, who will never walk a day in his life. And getting the news that her son will never move a day in his life, she raises this young man amongst 5 other children, and she cares for him in such a way that he's the longest living person with muscular dystrophy of his kind in our country today, and that is my mother. And God not only put Samir in her path, but when she came to this country, she lived in a 2-family flat. And God gave her a woman to care for who also was disabled or differently abled. And her name happened to be my mother's name. So what I take from that is that along the way in our lives, God places people and situations in our path. And if we are aware enough, if we could think deep enough about what each of those situations mean and how they can impact us and impact our lives, then we carry them with us and we draw strength from their resilience, from their courage, from their compassion, from their taqwa, from their sense of ikhlas, and from their sense of adl. I thank you so very much for your time and your energy, and I ask that you keep us all of your dua, and you keep the women of this world, especially those in Syria and other places who are managing the most stressful situations in our dua. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. How are you? I am so happy to be with you here, with all my brothers and sisters, fathers and mothers. Before speaking about my story, I would like to assure you that I am so proud of ISNA, but also would like to work with it to promote these values throughout the world. I am so proud of ISNA, who denouncing violence, conflict, and extremism. I encourage you all to support this great organization, ISNA, in realizing its goals. Dear everyone here, I consider you to be very lucky people because you belong to two great nations, the American nation and the Muslim nations. Yes. So you are lucky people because you belong to these two great nations, American nations and Muslim and Islamic nations. God has placed you with these two great opportunities. So you should take advantage of it and match up the high expectation of this great position. Try to be best sources of kindness, of love, of giving, and peace for your fellow American and for your fellow Muslims. You can look to the rest of the world from here in America, where civil societies exist and human rights are respected, and share your experiences with them as the world has become a small village. Invite the rest of the world to join effort with you to build a better future for generations to come. You have to know that the earth is our common mother, is our home, and the humanity is our nation. So be proud that you are here in America, and be proud that you are American citizen and that you are Muslim citizen, and you have to carry your responsibility to save the world. Dear brothers and sisters, now I'm gonna tell you something short about my story and why I started with this small message. Because we in our countries suffered a lot from dictatorism and from the corruption. We in our countries suffered from corruption and dictatorship, suffered from violence, suffered from hatred. Because of that, people like me decided to make revolution against all the dictatorship in our countries. People like me decided to make revolution against all the corruption in our countries. People like me decided to make revolution against injustice in our countries. And when we decided to make this great revolution, we decided to make it with one tool, which is non-violent. I believe that we can face all the kind of violence with non-violence. I believe that we can face all the hatred feeling with the love feelings. I believe that we can face all the feeling of discrimination with the feeling and working and cooperation with the people. Because of that, I decided to be in the first line of our peaceful battle. I decided to be a human, to be a woman that lead our society to freedom. I decided to don't just watch on all the crises around me, in economic, in political, in security, in social sides, in every side. I decided to be the solution, not just the part of the solution. Because of that, I made another revolution with the revolution against dictatorism or dictatorship and corruption, which is the revolution against the bad tradition and customs. Revolution against the wrong fatwa that tells women to stay at her home and don't go to the street and help her society. I decided to be a good woman, a good human for my society and for all the world. Because of that, anyone told me, Tawakkol, it's shame, it's aib, it's haram to go out your home, to stay with men, to go with him to the street, to help him, to scream your voice. I tell him, shut up. Because of that, because I made all that kind of revolutions, I am here in America with American women and American men, telling them that I am so proud that I am one of the people who did a great Arab Spring. We went to the street peacefully, carrying just the flowers in front of all the violence of the dictators in Tunisia, in Syria, in Egypt, in Libya, and in Yemen. Carrying the flowers, chanting, peaceful, peaceful, our revolution is peaceful. Most of my colleagues, most of them, they are youth. There is a lot of women died in the street while they are calling for freedom, for justice, for equality, for democracy, for good governance. But we knew that freedom has a high price, and we are ready to pay for it. We did a great revolution that stepped down Ben Ali and Al-Qaddafi and Hosni Mubarak and Ali Abdullah Saleh and inshallah very soon Bashar al-Assad. So with this great revolution, we don't want just to make our societies, our small countries to have a better life. No, because we know our responsibility for the world. Because we want this world to be better. And we know that this world will not be better if the dictators are still in the chair of responsibility. So we carry the flag of that we are global citizen. Yes, we are global citizen. That we will that we are now fighting the corruption and dictatorship in our countries, and we will take our responsibility to fight the corruption and dictatorism around the world. This is how the youth around the world think. This is the era of globalization. This is the era of social media. This is the era of the nations from every religion think. Now every people around the world, they hate the feeling of hatred. Sorry for my English, by the way. So, now all the people around the world, either they are Muslims or Christian or Jewish or non-believers, all of them, they want to live in one world. They want to live with each other, with respect each other, with love with each other, with help with each other, to save our small community, which is the humanity. So please, our Muslims community here, take your role to save the world. Take your role to be good global citizen. Love all the people around the world. Love all the people around you without thinking about his religion, his color, his ethnic. No, this is your message. You have to be strong with your community, with your friend, with all the people around you. If you are alone as Muslim, you marginalize yourself. Be with people. Work for people. Be with people without asking him if he is Muslim or not Muslim. Work for people without asking him if he's Muslim or not Muslim. This is your duty. And love America. It's very important to love your country, and you did, and you do. It's very important to love your country because America is a great nation who must implement the values of America. How to love America is to help the people here, is to pressure on your government to implement the values of America. The values of America is justice, freedom, equal citizenship, human rights, democracy, and good governance. And these values must be implemented not just in America, it must be implemented in all around the world, and America has to lead this flag, and you are the one who will pressure your government to do that. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
I want to thank these giants, Dr. Ingrid Matson, Dr. Jamila Kareim, Sister Najah Bazi, Sister Rumana Ahmed, and Mrs. Tawakkol Karman, activists and artists and healers and policymakers and nurturers and storytellers. Unfortunately, we don't have any time for Q&A, so I would ask that you come and discuss and meet with these incredible women and look into your own histories, into your own stories in your families, and you see how to be inspired, to be resilient, and to please share these stories. So I want to thank you for your patience with us, and if I can ask for another round of applause for these incredible giants. Thank you very much.